Australia is called the lucky country, but the nation is built on more than just luck. It's built on heroes and heart, explorers, builders, and the brave. Australia has been forged in war and peace, discovery and invention, adversity and triumph. This is the story of Australia. Australians have walked the land for at least 50,000 years. In every corner of the great continent, the oldest continuous cultures on Earth have drawn their stories. But the Australia today would be impossible without something that happens just over 200 years ago. Before a bridge unifies a nation and an architectural masterpiece divides it. The British arrive with almost 800 convicts, their guards, and plans to stay. But their story nearly ends when it's barely begun. June 26, 1790, Sydney. Just 2 years since those first ships, the British penal colony is on the verge of starvation. Supplies brought from England are rotting and running out. The convicts and their jailers can't grow or gather enough to feed themselves. 6 desperate men have already hanged for stealing food.
Britain's priority was to get rid of these convicts. I mean, the hulks were full, the prisons were full. There'd been a revolution kind of fermenting away in France. You know, they were worried. And getting rid of the people was the most important thing. What happened to them when they got there was perhaps a secondary consideration.
See if there's any meat today.
Hopefully. After last time, there weren't much.
Convict James Roos, sentenced to 7 years for stealing 2 silver watches. Hungry.
Another bag of corn, please.
And like everyone else in the prison colony, desperate for an English supply ship to save them.
See you next time.
Flag! Flag! The flag!
At last, the King's colours fly high on the Surprise as she glides into Sydney Harbour. One of 6 boats in the Second Fleet, she's been at sea for 6 months. The colonists believe the fleet brings food, seed, and people to help grow the colony. Salvation is here. James Roos has fallen for Elizabeth Perry, banished to Sydney for stealing clothes. The ship's arrival raises their hopes of forging a better life together in Australia.
I think James and Elizabeth Roos being given the opportunity to reinvent themselves, it just shows that we are the country for reinvention. It started way back then and we're still continuing to do it now.
But Elizabeth and James's dreams collide with a brutal reality. The Surprise and the ships that follow unload the sick and the dying. It'll be known as the Death Fleet. Of the 1,000 convicts who set out, more than 300 die. Most of the survivors are too sick to walk, let alone save the colony. The Second Fleet wasn't the British Navy. The transportation job was given to contractors better known for running African slave ships.
The Second Fleet was an absolute catastrophe. The vessels arrived with convicts starving, dying of scurvy. Many of them were taken out of the hold and died upon reaching the fresh air. It was an absolute tragic situation.
Now James Roos must act. Back in Cornwall, he was a farmer before burglary brought him to Australia. He thinks he can show the rest of the colony how to farm and survive here.
He is the only farmer. He has some skills. He goes to the governor and says, if you give me some land, I'm going to start a farm and I'm going to show people how to become farmers.
The governor gives Roos seed, convict labourers and land near Parramatta, west of Sydney. Roos sees that the soil is poor. He burns the bush, a first for Europeans in Australia. He uses the ash to fertilise the land, a trick he learnt as a farm boy. He hopes it's the key to growing Australia's first successful crop of corn. What the British see as a new land is actually ancient. Australian soils have been leached of their nutrients over millions of years. For the Europeans, the seasons are back to front. They can't read the weather, and they're trying to grow crops never before planted on a continent.
Oh no.
There's nothing here.
What's happened? It's all ruined.
There's nothing.
James and Elizabeth's first crop of corn fails.
If they couldn't produce a successful crop, it's failure and death. Really, if they weren't able to farm the land, to harness the energy, the natural resources that were here, it meant death.
But they refuse to give up. From the shriveled cobs, they harvest just enough seed to sow one more crop. The convicts work the land even harder. They dig in compost and what's left of their failed crop. In England, James would plant corn in spring. Now he tries something radical, planting all his seed in the Australian winter. Where he comes from, winter means reliable rain. At first, the fertilised soil nourishes a promising new crop.
Oh, we need water.
Quickly.
But this winter is cruel. It brings an Australian drought. James and Elizabeth struggle to save their thirsty crop. Without a downpour, the corn is doomed, the colony in danger of collapse.
It's no use.
And then, when all seems lost, the heavens open.
Jackie!
Their corn flourishes. They become the first colonists to feed themselves, paving the way for the family farms that will transform Australia.
James Roos is the father of agriculture in Australia. He is the man who shows how to do it, where to do it, and what will do best.
The Rooses' first farm now lies beneath the city of Parramatta. From what they started, Australia now feeds itself and more than 60 million people worldwide. Never again will the colony starve. But it remains a tiny outpost at the edge of a vast continent and ways of life stretching back tens of thousands of years. The Darling Downs, Queensland. 45,000 years ago. From here to what will be called Margaret River in the west, megabeasts roam. Goannas, bigger than calves. 2-ton wombats. A bird over 3 meters tall with claws to match and football-sized eggs. And a meat-eating marsupial, mean enough to kill them all. People live here too. And today, the hunter is hungry. His family depends on him to survive. His country is drying up. Food is harder to find. And he's not the only predator looking for a kill. The first Australians arrive at least 50,000 years ago. Sea levels are lower, but coming to Australia by boat is humans' longest sea voyage so far.
You know, there really was an Aboriginal Captain Cook. There really was a first person to put their footprints on this continent.
45,000 years ago, the Earth is cooling and Australia is drying up. Rivers and lakes evaporate. Half of all species will die out. Only the fittest will survive. The hunter is locked on, stalking kangaroos. His spear is light and lethal from up to 30 meters. It's the most advanced javelin technology in the world. But the hunter's most potent weapon is knowledge, passed down over hundreds of generations.
Through their stories, Aboriginal people learned how to respect the land. They tell us how to eat from the land, to how to live from the land.
With all his know-how and skill, the hunter creates one chance. Something spooks the kangaroos. And a new hunt is about to begin. Australia's own Marsupial lion. The world's deadliest carnivorous mammal. Its 8-centimetre claws will tear the guts out of any animal or human. It has jaws like bolt cutters. This death machine weighs in at over 90 kilos. The lion has one more deadly trick in its arsenal. This killer cat can also climb trees. Despite its fearsome power, for now, the marsupial lion goes hungry. His species struggles to survive across the drying continent. All the megabeasts are under pressure. They need massive amounts to eat, and food is running out. The first Australians survive by making the most of every opportunity. While men hunt, women and children gather plants, small animals and fish. Fewer creeks and billabongs are available to people and animals. For the second time today, they clash. For today, this Australian family is safe.
They would have had to evolve and educate themselves to get better at the ways of surviving, otherwise they would have died off. And we know that they didn't die off because I'm still sitting here in front of you, and it's an inspiring story.
The sheer fact that people could develop a culture and live in the most inhospitable conditions has said to Australians, we can do this, we won't be beaten. There is possible life here on the driest continent on Earth.
Around 40,000 years ago, the megabeasts die out. Indigenous Australians thrive. For at least 5,000 years, they trade with outsiders from Asia. But the British colony changes everything. October 17, 1804. Cape Barren Island, Bass Strait. American sealers are waging Australia's first trade war. The colony in Sydney is branching out. Its ships explore the coast, establishing new settlements and new industries. But the Americans are muscling in. Captain Joseph Morrell, survivor of the Death Fleet, pioneer of colonial Australia's first big business. He's about to risk his life for his livelihood, to defend a rich resource from American poachers.
The Americans are the new kids on the block. They're newly independent as a nation, and they're starting to look around and see what there is to be had. And so they're turning up on the coast of Australia and even nosing their way around into Bass Strait. And they're finding what we're finding, which is a massive amount of seals just asking to be made into money.
Along the southern coast of Australia, gangs of ex-convicts slaughter vast herds of seals. Before iron ore, before gold, before wool, Australia exports seal pelts and seal oil to the world.
I've sailed across Bass Strait, and most Aussies don't realise that in around about 1805 there was this incredible industry there that was in effect bigger than the mining industry today, because it was exporting millions and millions of dollars in today's money of exports, and it was basically seal skins.
In London, seal pelts are in demand. Seal oil lamps light British homes and streets. The city's craftsmen use the finest seal fur and felt for luxury goods.
So the skins were used to make shoes, really strong, good quality shoes. And the fur was used to put on things like hats, which was this new craze that was taking Europe by storm and taking Britain by storm. And it meant that if you took a hat that was worth, say, a bare 2 shillings and put the fur on it, all of a sudden that same hat was worth more than £1. So there's a massive amount of profit to be made if only you could get the skins and the furs around the world to market.
Money from sealing is crucial to the Australian colony. But Americans have been bullying sealers up and down the coast. They want all the business for themselves. Now they're here for Morell, with a lesson in US diplomacy.
You looking for me?
The Americans have bigger ships and more men.
How many of us are you gonna take, you yucky dog?
And they ambush Morell when half his crew is down the coast. They expect this to be easy. Their plan for anyone who stands in the way of America's takeover of the Australian seal trade is to make an example of them. A bloody example.
I'm gonna take that off you and strangle you with it! Shut up! Shut up!
Morell's best hope is that the rest of his crew will come to his rescue in time.
Dad, come over! Quick help! Over here! Back in the cave!
Shut up! Quick, shoot him! Get up! Get up!
The ragtag band of ex-convicts is still heavily outnumbered. The Americans drive home their advantage. But today they face local sealers who put their lives on the line and fight back.
Living through the hardship and understanding that you've got to fight for everything that you have and that you can't give up, because back then, that was their livelihood. That was how they were going to survive.
Morell escapes, and his men fight the invaders to a standstill.
Leave them! Come on! Get the barrels! Let's go! Come on!
The locals lose their seal oil and pelts, but they've shown they'll battle ferociously for what's theirs. The Americans ship out, seeking other undefended seal colonies.
We had an export business right there and then, and we wanted to protect our turf. We wanted to protect that industry. We founded that. We knew that that was going to be an opportunity for Australia.
Yankee scums! Next time we'll have ya!
The seal trade, then whaling, fuel the colony's growth. Eventually, sealers' camps become coastal towns and cities like Hobart, Port Fairy, and Victor Harbour. March 1797. Parramatta is thriving, thanks to pioneer farmer James Roos. The first Australians fight back against the expanding colony. Their leader is penal boy, Bidjigal man, freedom fighter.
You want to attack?
Commanding the first full-blown attack on a township by an Aboriginal force.
What a warrior means to me is someone that, stands proud of who they are and will do absolutely anything to defend their land, their country.
To his people, Penal Boy is a clever man, a warrior with mystical powers. To the colony, he's a rebel, a terrorist.
Go, run!
What happens next will decide who controls this land. And set the pattern for more than 100 years of war at the frontiers between black and white Australia.
He's coming! Lieutenant!
The colony is 4,500 strong. 2,000 hectares are now farms. Local Indigenous peoples are driven off their land, and their population decimated by the diseases the colonists bring with them. But they fight back under Penal Boy.
Pemulwuy is a very interesting character because he does something that no Aboriginal person has had to do before. He invents his own politics in a way. What he has to do is unite these clans who've always squabbled over different things, you know, and been fiercely independent against a common enemy, the British. And he does it through sheer courage.
Lieutenant! Lieutenant! Pemulwuy's coming. He's here.
How far?
A mile, maybe less.
Quick, barricade the entrance.
The name Pemulwuy fills the settlers with fear.
Scrape through. Stack it on top in the centre.
In many raids, farmers have seen their crops burned, their livestock speared.
Robson, guns from the armory. Jack, keep a lookout. They're coming from the north.
Pemulwuy and his men have already killed 17 colonists.
Behind the barricades.
The organised attack on Parramatta is a terrifying escalation for the settlers, who are still vastly outnumbered on the continent. But not all white men are on the colony's side. Escaped convicts join Pemulwuy's resistance.
Right, so we ram it home.
They have stolen muskets, and they reveal to Pemulwuy the white man's magic.
Powder in the pan.
Gunpowder.
Then we fire.
Understanding guns helps Pemulwuy invent new strategies to fight the invaders.
You have a go.
That demystification broke down the fear of the power of the muskets, and Pemulwuy gets very daring in how he takes on the colonists and almost seems to say to them, I'm not frightened. You can't scare me with that anymore.
If Pemulwuy can take Parramatta today, perhaps he can drive the colonists back into the sea. They're part of one of the greatest military powers the world has ever seen. But they are far from home and few in number. The winners of this fight will hold this land. The losers face death and dispossession.
You want to hurt us? Here we are!
Launched from his woomera, Pemulwuy's spear can kill from 60 metres. The colonists' guns are deadly from 80 metres, but they're slow to reload. Two technologies, invented thousands of years apart, go head to head. The Battle of Parramatta is close fought. Pemulwuy is hit, but fights on. Neither side gives an inch. Until the great warrior falls. He's shot 7 times.
Go! Go! Go!
Without their leader, his men retreated.
Go! 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 Go!
Get some men, spread out! After them! Spread out, over there! He's alive.
But Pemulwuy defies death.
The mythology that emerges after he's been shot by these muskets, the absolute high watermark of British technology, when that can't bring Pemulwuy down, the esteem and the myth around him only grows.
That night, bullets still in him and wearing leg irons, Pemulwuy escapes to fight on.
is this guy really a magic man? You know, is he invincible? Can't he be killed?
Pemulwuy fights the settlers for another 5 years. When they finally corner and kill him, the colonists take off his head and send their trophy to London. But killing Pemulwuy does not bring peace. For the next 100 years and beyond, from the Pacific to the Indian Ocean, Aboriginal people will fight to keep their ancestral land.
Pemulwuy was one of those stories that is inspiring for not just Aboriginal people, but for all Australians, that if people are going to come to our shores and try to take away our freedoms, it's definitely worth something to stand up and fight against.
Pemulwuy is not the only Australian to take on the British Crown. 1807. Sydney is a wild frontier town. Amongst its 3,000 settlers, convicts and soldiers, brawling, prostitution and drinking are rife. Rum is the colonists' booze of choice. They also use it to buy and sell just about everything. Some make a killing, and many live better than they ever dreamt of in Britain. People like soldier John Davis, rum trader, family man. He's built his own house, but on land he doesn't own. Now a new governor threatens to destroy his home and his livelihood. Governor William Bligh. 10 years ago, he lost his ship, the Bounty, in a famous mutiny. He's short-tempered and foul-mouthed, but also brilliant and driven.
William Bligh was a strict disciplinarian, very legalistic.
Get me the correct eviction notices now!
He obviously had a below-average interpersonal skills, as the mutiny on the Bounty demonstrated, but he stood up to these crooked military officers.
Bligh plans to clean up what he sees as a cesspit of corruption, to destroy the rum trade, and to demolish illegally built houses like John Davis's family home. What Davis and men like him do next should see them all hang. They will directly challenge the vision England has for Australia.
England was determined that Australia would be this utopian, agrarian, non-commercial, bureaucratic state. We were an experiment, but the settlers wanted to experiment in their own way. We didn't just want to grow wheat and process convicts. We wanted to be enterprising.
But the colony's new enterprises are held back because there's no money. Incredibly, it's a deliberate strategy by the authorities in Britain.
New South Wales doesn't have any currency to begin with because the geniuses in the Colonial Office don't think that convicts and ex-convicts will need any money. The convicts turn up, they're from the largest city in the world at that stage, and they're part of a modern world, and they want to live modern, and they want money to buy clothes and grog and to be able to gamble. So from the very jump, you need to start using other things to stand in for ordinary money.
Rum stands in for money. It's crucial to Sydney becoming a booming centre of South Pacific trade and turning many ordinary colonists into wealthy men. When Governor Bligh takes on the rum trade, almost all of Sydney becomes his enemy.
Today is the day, folks. We get rid of Governor Bligh. I want to get signatures. Please feel free to enjoy the ride.
John
There's plenty
MacArthur,
of rum to go
a
around.
powerful businessman and effective organiser, and Army Commander Major George Johnston see an opportunity.
I think the people are ready. I think the people are ready. Yes, indeed they are.
They start a petition against Bligh and his reforms.
Where do I sign?
John Davis is on board from the start. And the King's man faces another mutiny.
The more signatures we get, the quicker we get him out of office. Are you with me? Yes! Please drink some more rum, enjoy yourself, and sign the petition.
If the rebels lay a hand on the governor, it's treason. And the penalty for treason is death. January 26, 1808.
Your Excellency, Governor Bligh! Show yourself, sir!
Less than a year since Governor Bligh moved against the rum traders,
You two upstairs, you two through there.
Major Johnston marches troops into Government House. In the face of mutiny, Bligh could order every one of the rebels to be shot. But all the guns are with Johnston. The governor destroys what his enemies might use against him in court.
Unhand me. This is treason, sir. I'll see you swing for this. Take him away. Johnson. Johnson!
Under house arrest, Bligh plots his return to London
I will go no further.
and British justice. Johnston makes himself acting governor. His de facto wife, an ex-convict transported for shoplifting, is now the colony's unofficial First Lady. Johnston has taken a massive risk. He returns to London to face trial for mutiny. The court convicts him, but rules that he acted under extraordinary circumstances. Johnston escapes the gallows and jail. He's sent back to Australia and allowed to keep the small fortune he made from the rum trade.
The Rum Rebellion is significant because it's the first time we send a governor packing, and Governor Bligh represents all the outmoded, obsolete ideas of what this colony is meant to be like, and we won't have a bar of it.
I don't think the Rum Rebellion was a revolt against the authority of England so much as it was a revolt against the despotic nature of one man, being Bligh. But unwittingly, I think they did start a process of undermining the social power of England in Australia.
John Davis and his family rebuild their home. For colonists like them, Australia is a land of opportunity. It's a place where people make their own luck. And even those sent here in chains will seize any chance for a better life. January 13, 1834. Macquarie Harbour, Tasmania. One of the most brutal prisons in the world. For convicts who refuse to toe the line. When they're not being punished, convicts are put to work building ships. The Frederick is almost ready to sail. Just a handful of prisoners give the ship her finishing touches.
As Mars and Minerva were viewing of some...
Below deck, convict James Porter, professional thief, amateur singer, nervous as hell. He and his mates are about to attempt the impossible. A daring, dangerous plan to steal the ship and sail 10,000 kilometres to South America. Little do they realise they'll help trigger a chain of events that will lead to the end of convict transportation to Australia. For convicts who obey the rules and work off their sentences, life is harsh, but not hopeless.
The convict system was a way of giving convicts a second chance at life. Broken lives could be healed, that salvation was possible. But what did you do to people who weren't prepared to take that deal?
You send them to remote, brutal prisons that are a kind of hell.
They were really the prison camps of Australia, places of terrible cruelty.
Harsh prisons dot the fringes of the colonies. One of the toughest and most difficult to escape from is at Macquarie Harbour. On board the Frederick, Porter distracts the guard and gives the signal for the breakout to begin. If they're caught, they'll hang for piracy. Incredibly, the convicts have made their own guns. Their ingenuity and meticulous planning match the boldness of their escape attempt.
This is not just a jailbreak. This is taking the jail with you when you leave.
You've got the foxhole in front. This is the mainsail.
For months, the convicts have prepared for this moment. Most are weavers, bricklayers, farmhands. Their only sailing experience being chained to a prison ship and transported to Australia. The sailors among them teach the rest seamanship. Right under the noses of guards. In their cabin, the ship's officers and captain are oblivious to the unfolding mutiny.
Easy now.
All right!
Don't move or bleed brains out.
Get down there!
They lock the guards and crewmen in the hold. But if the convicts' plan is to succeed, they must seize the weapons stored in the captain's cabin.
What's going on here? I'm taking the ship.
The officers overpower the convicts and lock them out.
Keep it up!
Their escape now depends entirely on their homemade pistols.
Lay down your arms! Lay them down! If you spare our lives, we'll come on deck.
Porter and his mates now control the ship. They put their hostages ashore, but this escape has only just begun. At dawn, they set sail for South America.
Mainsail!
Porter sailed those waters as a younger man, and Chile is home to his wife and child. But it's a daunting journey across a vast, unforgiving ocean.
The voyage that these guys set off on to go across the Southern Ocean, which is a pretty terrible ocean, it's one of the worst out there, and huge, grey, empty ocean full of storms, and the waves down there are incredible.
Desperate situations make people do desperate things. And I don't think that was desperate. I think that's pure ingenuity.
Miraculously, in 6 weeks, the rookie sailors make it to South America and freedom. Porter rejoins his family. After 2 years, Porter and 3 of his gang are caught by the British Navy. They're hauled to Australia to face justice. But during their trial, something extraordinary happens. Public opinion begins to turn in favour of Porter and against the convict system itself.
There's a movement that is just starting to flicker into being, and it's fuelled by a sense that we're not going to take the refuse of Britain anymore.
Especially among the more well-to-do colonists, there was this idea to end transportation in order to create an opportunity for a kind of post-convict Australia, a kind of purified Australia.
James Porter and his mates are sent back to prison, but they escape the gallows. And within 15 years, convict transportation to Australia's east coast ends. Eventually, the boats stop coming altogether. In all, 806 prison ships bring more than 160,000 convicts to the colonies, the forebears of 1 in 5 Australians today. 1837, Portland, 500 kilometres east of Adelaide. 3 convicts on the run, only 1 horse between them. John Foley, thief, brawler, desperate. Yet he will help save South Australia, the only colony to reject convicts entirely. And he'll show the free settlers they need the guts and tenacity of bushwise outlaws.
On one level, Foley is a fugitive from justice. He's an escaped convict, so he's trying to get as far away as he possibly can. On another level, he's a man on the make. He's got wanderlust, and he loves keeping on going.
Less than 50 years on from the first fleet, free settlers now outnumber convict arrivals. Many come to seek their fortune. Some will find it in wool. Light and easy to transport, it will clothe Europe's millions and make rich men of the free settlers who become squatters.
Squatters were the pioneers of the wool industry, builders of modern Australia, and our prosperity rode on the sheep's back for a long time.
These squatters have what Foley needs: fast horses.
Let's go around and take the horses. A horse is equivalent today of a car. It's like having your car stolen, but there was no insurance. So if you had your horse stolen, it was like a year's salary had gone.
Single-handedly, Foley takes on the squatters, distracting them while his mates make a play for the thoroughbreds.
Girls, get your guns!
Don't touch him!
Ha! Sit! Ha! Horse!
On their stolen horses, the outlaws ride more than 500 kilometres, all the way to South Australia.
Foley does what no other white man has ever done before. He finds a way from the new settlements on the coast of Port Phillip and Victoria through to Adelaide and South Australia.
They are also the first Europeans to see some of the most fertile land on the continent: Victoria's Western Plains.
The great thing about the Western Plains that Foley saw was that there was no need to clear them. There they were, laid out, abundant winter rainfall, good grass, well-watered country. There was food in abundance. It was, in some senses, a paradise.
Foley's journey will change the fate of South Australia. Adelaide, 1838. South Australia is less than 2 years old. It's established as Australia's only convict-free zone and a place of religious freedom. In time, these dusty streets will become known as the City of Churches. But these free settlers will need more than faith to survive. Foley has fallen out with his mates. He comes here in the hope of starting a new life. But amongst these good citizens, a new face stands out. Until recently, Adelaide saw no need for a police force. But as men begin to arrive from the penal colonies, they recruit one.
Police, what's your business in town?
My business is none of your business.
Put the gun down.
For pulling a gun on a copper, Foley faces the death penalty. But he's not alone with his troubles. In the driest colony, on the driest inhabited continent, farms are failing and food is scarce. The free settlers don't have the skills to survive here.
You think of the difficulties of clearing the land. You think of the difficulties of fencing the land and then managing stock. These are all skills that these people didn't necessarily have. They won't have convicts, so who is going to provide the labour force? Who is going to feed them?
South Australia's acting governor is George Stephen. He knows the colony's survival depends on knowledge of the land and the bush skills of men like Foley. He's also heard the convict has discovered fertile land.
If I spare your life, you will need to work for me.
The governor and Foley strike a deal. In exchange for his life, Foley must drive desperately needed stock along the path he pioneered while on the run.
Adelaide would have died the slow and painful death that prospected Sydney Cove in the early years without those incredibly brave and adventurous men moving huge droving mobs of cattle and sheep to the Adelaide markets. That is what made it possible for them to keep on going.
They are the people that set this country up. They may have been convicts, but that doesn't mean that they were not capable of doing the most amazing things.
With the help of convicts and ex-convicts, the colonies expand. Armies of stockmen, squatters and their families spread across Australia. Along stock routes, like those forged by Foley, sprout the first inland towns, including Mount Gambier, Seymour and Goulburn. Within 50 years, 100 million sheep will support a population of 3 million people. Wealth flows along the stock routes to the cities, delivering one of the highest standards of living in the world. But the oldest continuous cultures on Earth stand in the way of the colony's rapid expansion. Just as Pemulwuy did at Parramatta over 40 years ago. The first Australians fight back. Eventually, they are driven from the lands most valuable to the booming colonies. Their battle to regain what they lose continues to this day. British ships have been bringing colonists to Australia for 54 years. Nearly 200,000 migrants now call Australia home, but only 1 in 3 is a woman. 1842, Sydney. Caroline Chisholm, mother of 3, social engineer, desperate to save 17-year-old Flora. She fears the girl is pregnant to a married man. Abandoned by their families and communities, fallen women at the edge of the world often resort to desperate measures.
I felt certain from her manner she meditated suicide.
Sydney's a rough port and frontier town. Boozing and brawling are rife. Crime out of control. In the hope of attracting more women, Britain introduces free passage for single girls. Hundreds arrive. But there's nowhere for them to live, and few jobs.
I can't imagine what those poor young women would have thought to get off the boat and arrive in the colonies. And it would have been like the Wild West. It would have been just such a shock to the system.
If the colony is to become a country, it needs children raised in families. What Caroline Chisholm does will change the lives of thousands of young women and transform Australia for generations to come. For some, the new arrivals are a windfall. Brothel madams looking for working girls pose as respectable women searching for domestic staff. Caroline aims to get there first.
One of the problems for these women was they were alone, they were young, they were financially vulnerable, and therefore people preying on their innocence could hit their target quite easily.
Caroline first met Flora only a few months ago.
Wait here, I'm going to come back for you.
Flora?
On my first visit to the immigrants' barracks, my attention became fixed on a young and beautiful Highland girl. The arm of a gentleman was around her waist.
Flora!
Are you a mother?
If Flora's pregnant and ends up a single mother, her options are radically curtailed. She's maybe going to be a laundress at best, or a prostitute, and her future in the colony isn't that good.
Caroline finds Flora a home and a job. There are hundreds of girls like Flora in the colony, and little or no help for them. Caroline has a bold idea. She establishes Australia's first employment agency for young women.
You must be Lily. Welcome.
She gets them jobs as servants in good homes across the rapidly expanding colony. From there, they often meet men and marry. Caroline will only place girls with families she trusts.
I think she may suit my wife.
She is too young. She is too pretty and inexperienced for your house.
And pray, madam, what do you know of me?
All that Flora told me.
Good day.
Good day.
In an era when women hold little influence, Caroline is revolutionary.
Now, girls.
She was an extraordinary woman. In many ways, changed the face of Australia because of the opportunities that were given to young women, particularly.
As a young girl myself, to look at our history and these women who lived in a day and age where they really didn't have a lot of rights. They weren't allowed to vote, and yet they still stood up for what they believed in.
Within 3 years, Caroline finds homes and jobs for 11,000 young women, an average of 70 every week. Almost single-handedly, she changes the social fabric of Australia from a raw frontier land into a nation built by mums and dads and kids.
I think the fact that she took on the plight of all these young women, Caroline Chisholm in a way became the mother of Australia.
Today, more than 1 million Australians can trace their ancestry to Caroline Chisholm's girls. The society she helps engineer will enter a new era of unprecedented wealth. Australia is set to become one of the richest countries on earth. September 10, 1851. Yarrawee Valley, Victoria, 100 kilometres west of Melbourne. Australia's population and wealth are about to skyrocket because of one man, James Esmond. Stagecoach driver, prospector, has the luck of the Irish. He seeks his fortune in the earth.
Mining, and gold mining in particular, has always had an extraordinary allure. There is nothing like it to motivate people.
Small amounts of gold have already been discovered in New South Wales. Now diggers hunt in Victoria.
Here, boss. There's someone coming.
Blacksmith James Oddie, first to stake a claim in the Yarrawee Valley. He and his men work what they think is the most likely place to strike it rich.
Thinking this would be a nice spot to set up. How do you do? The name's Esmond. James Esmond.
This ground's taken.
We thought we might be neighbours.
You thought.
With the possibility of great wealth comes fierce competition.
So it's like that, is it?
At the dawn of the gold rush, there's little law and order. Prospectors have their own methods of resolving disputes.
We didn't have a very good start as a nation. The first mob that came and settled were crooks and con men. The next that came were greedy, avaricious gamblers who wanted some gold. So it's a wonder we turned out at all decent. Maybe we haven't.
Enough! I'm sure these gentlemen have taken the point.
Well, come on, lads, we'll look elsewhere.
We might try up the hill near our tents.
Okay, right neighbourly of you. Come on, lads.
Diggers believe most gold lies close to creeks and rivers. Esmond and his crew must retreat to higher ground, to land considered much less likely to contain gold. A few hundred metres away, they set up camp and dig.
Honey, look.
Esmond's misfortune is about to pay off.
Fellas, get some water.
It's a huge 250-gram nugget of pure gold.
Would you take a look at that? Would you look at the size of it? Quick, Mo!
Unknowingly, Oddie has directed his rival to the tip of the motherlode. In the 1850s, a third of the world's gold supply will come from Victoria. Over 2 days, Esmond and his mates dig out 27 kilograms of gold.
Would you look at the shine on it?
They start scratching and there is gold. They start panning and there is gold. Kookaburras poo in their eye, it's gold. It's a golden valley. And they try to keep it secret for as long as they can, but pretty soon the word gets out and they come from everywhere.
A tent town erupts around Esmond's diggings. It will become the wealthy city of Ballarat. A construction boom begins. New railways connect Melbourne to gold towns, like Bendigo and Castlemaine. Melbourne overtakes Sydney as the biggest and richest city in Australia.
Melbourne is one of the great cities of the empire within 20 or 30 years of its beginnings, because it is built on wealth, gold wealth.
Lured by the chance to strike it rich, hundreds of thousands of prospectors flood Victoria. In less than a decade, its population rockets from 25,000 to more than 500,000. The world's greatest population explosion, driven by gold. For 40 years, miners strike gold around the continent. It makes Australia one of the richest places on Earth and brings here people from every part of the world for the first time.
We have immigrants here from 150 nations of the world, over 210 different communities. And it began with the gold rush. The gold rush actually bleeds into a whole lot of things we're now really proud of. It did start with a supercharged lottery, Gold Mania.
Despite the gold rush and the enormous wealth it brings, the outside world of electronic communications stops on Australia's doorstep. July 1862, the Northern Territory, 1,500 kilometres from Adelaide, and racing to become the first European to cross the continent and survive is John McDowell Stuart. Thirsty, exhausted, risking his life to forge a path for the telegraph wire that will connect Australia to the world. He's already tried and failed twice.
There's some incredible Australian explorers, but one of the most extraordinary was John McDowell Stuart, because he kept attempting to try and go from, in effect, the southernmost bit of Australia, Adelaide, to Darwin. He was the ultimate Aussie explorer as far as I'm concerned.
This is the age of exploration and communication. The world has the electric telegraph, a global network of cables for sending instant messages. But the wires stop just north of Australia.
Before the telegraph, if you want to get a message to London, you have to write it on a piece of paper. It has to be put on a ship and taken all the way to London. It takes months. And then it takes months for the reply to get back. But the moment you create electronic information with the twisting of two bits of wire together, the world has changed forever.
If the telegraph is to reach the new cities, it must span the continent from north to south, over a merciless landscape that turns back or kills every white man who tries to cross it. In less than 2 years, 4 expeditions attempt to cross Australia. It's the amazing race of the 19th century. Only a few months earlier, Stuart's great rivals, Burke and Wills, make it from Melbourne to the Gulf of Carpentaria. Their expedition is lavishly funded and equipped, but on the way home, they die of sickness and hunger. John Stuart is 3 months out of Adelaide and still 1,800 kilometres from the Northern Sea. He's in the dead heart of the continent, on punishing terrain and in crippling heat. With every step, they're further away from safety.
When the Australian explorers and settlers journey inland, by and large they journey into drier and harsher country. Country that seems to say, you don't belong here. A country that wants to drive you back. And Stuart's great achievement is that he pushes into the zone which we could think of as the zone of silence and of death.
No rain seems to have fallen here for a length of time. We have not seen a bird, nor heard the chirrup of any to disturb the gloomy silence.
Stuart has explored Central Australia for more than 15 years. He's learnt to travel light and strictly ration dehydrated food. Their biggest enemy is thirst. To stay alive, they must constantly find new sources of water.
Come on, lads. On top. We'll keep moving north.
It's a task that doesn't fall to Stuart alone. He understands he's crossing harsh, remote, but not empty country. Since the British arrived in Australia more than 70 years ago, contact with Indigenous Australians often ends in bloodshed. But Stuart looks to the locals for help, especially about where to find water.
When white men went out and successfully found their way across vast tracts of country, you'll often find it was because they had really good relationships and knew how to interact with the Aboriginal people along the way.
Once Stuart finds a water source, he travels out and back, up to a dozen times, in search of the next creek or spring. Only then does he move on. It's an exhausting way to explore. After 5 months, they've travelled over 3,000 kilometres, but they're close to the limits of their endurance.
He was an extraordinary bushman, the most incredible perseverance, and he was able to motivate the fellow explorers that went with him.
But as Stuart and his men struggle north, they're at their limit. They're running out of food. The horses are sick. The water bags leak, and the mercury nudges 50 degrees. Yet Stuart continues to pit his toughness against the bush, the desert, and distance. And then,
Slut!
a sound they've heard before.
Lads! Lads! Lads, it's a sea! Go on!
3,500 kilometres of desert, 6 months in the saddle, and Stuart gallops the beaches of the Timor Sea. He's the first European to cross Australia from Adelaide to what will become Darwin.
I have tried all my life to do this, and now have succeeded.
Stuart is a master map maker, and his charts will guide him and his men home. On the very same day as Burke and Will's funeral in Melbourne, John Stuart will ride the streets of Adelaide, triumphant.
The tyranny of distance. It's laid at the foundation of some of modern Australia's great successes. The telegraph line that Stuart surveyed across the continent was part of that enterprise of trying to conquer the tyranny of distance. I think it's a quintessential Australian characteristic, and it's one area where we excel.
An army of workers soon follows Stuart's path. They build the world's longest continuous overland telegraph line from Adelaide to the Timor Sea. It takes 2 years, 36,000 poles, 3,000 kilometres of wire stretched across the continent. Repeater stations will become the settlements of Alice Springs, Tennant Creek and Katherine. Now, events in London are news in Melbourne, not in months, but in hours.
What an impact it would have made on their lives. And then suddenly all this information was available quickly because transport services still weren't that fast then. You know, the world didn't move at a quick pace then. So the availability of instant information would have had a huge impact on people.
Australia is wired to the world, and with the flick of a switch, everything changes. Lightning fast communication, the newly rich economy, and a shorter working day means now it's time to play. June 5, 1869, Richmond, Melbourne. The Melbourne Football Club clashes with Her Majesty's troops. The soldiers wear red sashes. The battle's been fought for almost 2 hours, and it's a dead heat. 0-0.
Pick it up! Kick the ball!
One of the founders of football in Australia,
What's wrong with you?
Tom Wills, famous cricketer, desperate for the win.
Use the space! Go!
Success against the British will help him promote Victorian rules football and lay the foundations of a uniquely Australian sport.
When you sit and watch a match and you see all the elements that I think make a great country, in many ways are played out on a football field.
Let's keep it up!
The clock's running down, and Tom Wills calls for tactics which require a skill that will come to define this sport.
Use the width of the field! Kick the ball! Kick it over the top!
The mark. "20 years earlier, Tom saw his first high mark. His neighbours, boys from the Jabwaram and Jadwajali people, play a game called Man Gruk. Indigenous Australians play different versions all over the continent.
It's awesome to know that Aussie rules might have derived from Marngrook, a traditional game that Aboriginal people used to play where they used to fill a possum skin up with charcoal and there'd be 50 on each side. And they'd kick it and hand pass it and throw it and mark it all day long, sometimes over 3 or 4 days.
What he sees will stay with Tom Wills for the rest of his life.
I think it's going to keep them on their feet as well.
12 years later, Wills is one of Australia's most famous sportsmen. He's captain of the Victorian cricket team.
We need to devise a game of our own, a game that supports grown men on harder ground.
The cricket players need a new sport in winter, a game they can play in the wet.
If we can make the field bigger, we have 20 men on either side.
Wills went to school in England. He played rugby and soccer was everywhere. But Wills wants a new Australian game with the best action from each sport. And he remembers the moves he saw in Marngrook.
A handball style.
It's got a little bit of soccer, a little bit of Gaelic, a little bit of rugby, and you know, like I think that's why Aussies love it. It's a bit of a mongrel sport, a bit of a combo of everything, and that's how we are as Aussies.
We remove the crossbar and make 2 smaller posts either side. Maybe make the field an oval shape. Yes, agreed.
They put their signatures to 10 key rules. At this moment, what will become Aussie rules footy is born. And the timing is perfect. The economy's booming, wages soar, and there's more time to play. In Melbourne, workers have locked in an 8-hour day, while British workers still do up to 16. Australia is known around the world as the working man's paradise. Before the good times, only rich people played sport. Now, it's for everyone.
They weren't the privileged darlings of society. They were ordinary working men. Therefore, they couldn't lose their wages by having to take time off from a violent and vigorous game of footy. So it had to have rules.
Before the rule book, games were an excuse for a punch-up. 40 players aside, no refs, no boundaries. The brawling might go on for days. But even when it gets organised, the first proper footy games are still rough. On this winter day, back in 1869, Tom Wills looks to his cousin and team captain, Henry Harrison. He's one of Melbourne's best and toughest.
Football is essentially a rough game all the world over, and it is not suitable for men poodles and milksops.
It's still 0-0. The Aussies finally see their chance.
Go! Go!
The Victorians beat the British soldiers 1-0. Their pride in their team and their game will echo around Australia.
Got the bastards in the end.
I played AFL. I'm proud of the sport. I'm proud of what it taught me before I got into the world of golf. So at the end of the day, we actually embraced it because it was ours. Australian football is Australian football.
The game grows and spreads through the southern and western colonies. In a decade, the Victorian Football League kicks off. Every generation produces its own football heroes. In 1990, VFL becomes a national code and an Australian obsession.
And then off the step to fall forward. Big fly, Bird, Goods, could he roll it through? He can!
The biggest thing I love about football is the opportunities to play something that's so fun and inclusive. So many different shapes and sizes of people can play this game. It doesn't discriminate against where you come from, what team you follow, what religion you follow.
Every year, the game inspires more than 7 million footy fans to barrack for their teams around Australia.
As a nation, we can say that this is our game. I think it's the most exciting game in the world to watch. There's a haphazardness about it. It's high scoring, it's combative, there's a million things that I love about it. A game that we proudly say is the greatest in the world.
Sport, culture and commerce flourish in gold-rich cities like Melbourne. But gold fever is about to reach boiling point.
I'm not letting this happen anymore.
In a battle over mining licenses. November 1854, Ballarat, 115 kilometres west of Melbourne. 3 years after James Esmond hits pay dirt, prospectors from around the world still flock to Victoria's goldfields. Melbourne is deserted. All but 2 of its 40 police quit to dig for gold.
Hey, Tommy.
Mining with his cousin Tom and his cousin's wife Bridget is John Hines. Fresh off the boat from Ireland, believes in justice and freedom for all, about to take part in an armed rebellion that will be crucial to the rise of Australian democracy.
I think we should think of the gold miners as the backpackers of the 19th century. They are young, they are idealistic, they have an extraordinary sense of adventure, and they are people who are schooled in the most progressive, idealistic ideas that are coming out of Europe. They are Democrats, and they're not about to be bossed around by a military governor.
Because they don't own land, most miners can't vote.
Got your licence?
And they hate the government's new mining tax. To dig, miners must have a licence, and it's not cheap, a quarter of the average wage.
Oi.
Not everyone strikes it rich on the goldfields.
Where's your licence?
Most barely make ends meet. But the government demands its money, whether the diggers find gold or not.
It wasn't a tax on their labour, it was a tax on their presence. And like all poll taxes in history, it was enormously unpopular.
The police crack down on miners who can't or won't buy a licence. Their brutality and the tax's unfairness
I'm not letting this happen anymore.
infuriate miners like John Hines.
He's got a family.
And unify the diggers against the government.
Until we had a common enemy in terms of a brutal government taking money that you didn't have, perhaps that's what galvanised people to have a sense of inclusion, you know, and a sense of cohesiveness that maybe was lacking until then.
In an act of defiance, the miners burn their licences. They band together.
Let's go, boys. We need more woodmen.
And arm themselves.
Right.
The diggers build a rough fortress. It will become known as the Eureka Stockade. The British Army still defends the Australian colonies. The government sends in the troops.
When the government tries to push down, this time the Liberal activists stand back to back, build a stockade around them and say, come and get us, you bastards.
They raise their own flag, the Southern Cross.
I don't want anyone to get through the wall. We need more woodmen.
A symbol of Australia's place under the stars. To the government, it's an act of rebellion it will not tolerate. December 3, 1854, 3 a.m. The miners have been holed up in their stockade for 3 days. 276 soldiers and police take up positions around it. Captain John Wellesley Thomas's orders take the rebels by surprise and crush the resistance.
Redcock!
A ragtag bunch of barely trained miners
Get your guns, lads! Take aim!
versus the might of the British military machine.
Fire! Keep your head down!
Among the 150 rebels, John Hines. For the first time, Australians take up arms against the Crown
Get the gunpowder!
in pursuit of democratic rights.
Watch your left! Fire!
What's most stunning about the descriptions of the attack is the kind of bloodlust with which those troopers took on those men. It's like one of those scenes that you see on the television of a protest that just goes horribly wrong.
Despite the firepower and ferocity of the soldiers, the miners hold on. They kill 6 troops. But John Hines falls, along with 21 of his mates, and the Eureka Stockade. In the morning, the troops hunt down the survivors. Bridget Hines searches in vain for John. Like all of Australia, she's appalled by the carnage. But she and her children will live to see the miners' sacrifice is not in vain.
The Eureka Stockade was our French Revolution moment, you know, liberty, equality, fraternity.
In the wake of Eureka, the colonies reinvent themselves. The government scraps the mining licences. Victoria and South Australia become the first places in the empire where all British men over the age of 21 get the right to vote.
Victoria becomes the most democratic place in the world because not even in Britain can men without property vote.
We led democracy because of the Eureka Stockade. Australia became the light on the hill for all of those liberal democracies around the world who looked at what Australia was achieving. We led the world in democratic reforms.
Eureka shows that the men and women of Australia refused to put up with unjust rules forced upon them. A trait that will come to define them as the colonies become a nation.